All right, like I said, good morning. Happy New Year, and hope it's off to a good start for you. So, you know, all the jokes we could come into and stuff, and then before we know it, it'll be Christmas next year, and then here we go, rolling along. Don't wish to tell the seniors, I can't wait to graduate. I was like, yeah, and then you'll be wishing you can get back in. So, they don't. And I was the same way. So if you got young kids that are graduating, you can blame it on me because I tell them to live with your parents till you're 30. Take advantage of it. But anyway, hope everybody had a great New Year, and like I said, kind of get back in the swing of things and old life, I guess. Here now that the holidays are over, but starting off right here again, we're in James chapter 3, the last few verses of it. Word to the wise is what we've got entitled. Green box at the top. Just quickly right there. List people you know locally who are known by their nicknames only. Let's think about it. Just think about this. Are you driving this?
Well, I guess everybody has like animals.
Oh yeah. I can tell you right now, Carbon Hill, we got this. I made a list last night, so it's going to take me a while. Possum, I had a squirrel, we had rabbit, chicken, rooster, bear, bulldog. That's just a few right there, the nicknames. All those faces popped right in my head when I said those. I'm sure we got all those, right? So yeah. Any others beside animals? Anybody can think of? We don't have to call specific. Maybe people don't. I don't know if we need to call specific ones out.
Wendy.
Wendy?
Yeah, it was a man. He talked a lot.
Oh, W-I-N-D. I was thinking W-E-N-D-Y. Okay. Slim. So.
There are people that I don't even know their real names.
Yeah, there's people like I said. The bulldog. It was a kid I coached at Carbon Hill. His name was Jacob Smith, and I think he actually lives in California now. But like I said, he said, "Hey, where's Jacob?" I'm like, "Who?" And they go, "Bulldog." Oh yeah. If you talk school, you understand. There's somebody they'll come in to go, "Where's Johnny?" Who? And then they say their nickname. Oh yeah, he's in the gym, and whatever. So we get nicknames. All right. So as we're getting right here, let's go back to Wendy. Did he give himself that moniker? No. Probably chicken, rabbit, and all them. I don't know where the origins of those nicknames were, but it reminded me when I was thinking of this, and I guess this is the good thing for most of the people in this room. We probably remember this TV show Seinfeld. Anybody here watch Seinfeld often? I'm a big Seinfeld guy. I like Seinfeld. It would take the most mundane thing and it would make just a funny episode. Like, for example, they had an episode where they was just waiting around for their table to eat at a restaurant one night. That was an episode. So it was just little mundane things there, and they would take it, and of course they'd exaggerate. But George Costanza, one of the characters, he wanted to have a nickname at work. And he wanted the nickname T-Bone. So he said, he goes into the little board meeting, and they go, "From now on, I'm known as T-Bone." Of course, they didn't call him that, so they gave him another moniker. They called him Coco the Monkey, because if you watch that. So I guess my point right there is I got nicknames. Most of the time, can't give yourself it's kind of a general rule. Can't give yourself a nickname, can you? Usually it has to be put on you by somebody else. So we'll tie this in here in just a second. So matter of fact, I even found a newspaper article on it, commentary. So we're going to look at that, kind of, as they say, the hook here, as it's called. I think that's it from last night. Yeah. This is from a newspaper in somewhere up in Iowa, a little small town. And it goes, "Beware of self-proclaimed nicknames." And it says, some people love nicknames. Some people, it sounds kind of desperate. Let me see. Don't you love people that give themselves their own nickname? You know, usually we try to avoid them, steer clear of them. Had a guy in college, he told people, call him King. But you can tell the guy loved himself and thought others should do the same. They never did call him that. Let's see, it can be awkward at times when nicknames are inserted, especially when you're doing a business email. You ever had to come across that? Like, you have to email someone, you know what they go by, and then call them by their nickname, or do it. This is on the business server. So, but anyway, so instead of leaving their name at the end of the message, they leave their nickname, and it says. But anyway, it kind of goes on, and it goes. I had a nickname in college that was not self-proclaimed. It was one of those things that when someone says it once, then it sticks, and that's how nicknames spread, probably. And that's probably how it goes. Probably when somebody said, "Hey, we're gonna call him Wendy," probably stuck, didn't it? So it's like chicken or possum, all those right there. And it says most people. So the question is, are self-proclaimed nicknames better than the ones given to you by others? And most people seem to be on my side on this. They don't really count. If you give one to yourself, that's sort of lame. And other people, and it talks about that, and it even mentions the Seinfeld episode, so I actually had already thought about that before I saw that. So it goes, so there you go. If you're looking for a nickname, just stop. The best ones just happen organically. Yes, most people like it. Most likely it won't be the nickname you want, but that's life. So anyway, so don't give yourself a nickname is the moral of the story. And it's kind of what we're going to get to here in wisdom. That's what if you prepared today. 13 through 18 is talking about wisdom. And I think it's one of those where somebody comes in and goes, I'm wise, or when they start self-proclaiming their greatness or anything, does that usually make you pause? Because it's always like this. It's kind of sports, sometimes, it's a little, but most of the time, what's the best way, like a nickname, what's the best way to proclaim wisdom? It's not for you to come out and brag about it, it's for people to what? Well, recognize it themselves right there. And it's the same way in a lot of things. So that's just kind of the point right there that I was using that is a little humorous maybe. But yeah, nicknames, usually we don't give ourselves nicknames. We don't need to be going around self-proclaiming that we're wise. And again, it's not saying don't have confidence, but it's like so it's like like an athlete or something like that. People, I guess, after the football games last week, that quarterback from Indiana, he don't have to claim he's great, does he? He kind of proved it, didn't he? Or other players on the field. So, so that's one of those things. So it kind of gets us here to the introduction. How would you define wisdom in your own words? And this is one of those, if this was in my classroom today, I would get about responses, I can tell they just Googled it and AI'd it right there. And that's what I tell them. I want your own words right here. I don't care about, I always preface it. I don't want the textbook. I want to know what you think wisdom is. I'll start being mean right here and just start calling names. Hey, wait, I won't do that. What do you think, in your own words, how would you describe wisdom? The intelligent application of knowledge. I would accuse you. No, I'm just kidding. That's good. Pretty good. Intelligent application of knowledge. That's not bad. Do you have to have knowledge to be wise?
You gotta know stuff.
You gotta know stuff.
People can be intelligent in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure.
sometimes the most intelligent person is not wise. Correct.
Yeah, that's a pretty good statement there. A lot of intelligent people aren't wise. And I think that's, I saw some of that, or, in the reading right there, but in different areas right there. It's just like I tell the kids all the time, it's like, there are kids in my classroom, 10th graders or whatever, that are definitely a lot more intelligent when it comes to how motors are put together and stuff like that. I don't know. Put gas in it, change the oil. Something goes wrong, I guess I'm usually having to call somebody, usually Nathan or somebody else. Hey, what's wrong with this motor? Or Jeff. And but on a serious note right there, so, but I would say this, would you say that a lot of 10th graders are wise? Maybe, there's some, there's, every now and then you get that, but, it's part of the process. But, think about it though, how many of us was wise when we were in 10th grade? Not many, was it? So it is kind of a process and a journey, so that kind of leads me here. Think about this. Who is the wisest person you know or have known? Could be in a lot of different areas, couldn't it?
Well, for me, like, my mom is the wisest person I've known.
Mm-hmm.
And she graduated from high school, but
Yeah.
she never had a formal education, but she's just wise about living and about the world and.
Yeah. Anybody else?
My parents.
Parents, we get that a lot, don't we? Any others outside the family? Like I can think of some people I've known that I've, and again, whatever our field of profession is, I mean, being an educator for the last 30 years, I can think of people I've worked with I thought were very wise. Lots of wisdom and things. So I think we got all sorts, and again, Frida hit it right there, what made them wise right there. And again, if you think about it though, what is usually a key to wisdom? Knowing things is one thing. Experience, yeah. Learning, what was it? The intelligent application of knowledge. Could we say properly learning from experiences could be another thing? Possibly. So, and it's just like I've said before, and we're all, one of my key things, and it's great because like I said, coach, for example, at Hackleburg this year, I think, thing I enjoyed about it, got a chance to work with some great guys, some great kids, and when they messed up, and again, you probably, my coaching style is I'm not a yeller or a screamer. Pretty much, I only tell them is, guys, the only time I'm really going to get after you like that is when I don't see effort. But it's my job to teach you the game. So when I go up to them and I'm correcting something, the first thing they start doing is apologize. I'm sorry, coach. I'm sorry. And I'm just like, no. I said, hey, made a mistake. Like for example, I'm not gonna name the kid, but did a great job for us. Got his eyes in the wrong spot, and we told him all week, hey, you're gonna get lulled to sleep. They're gonna sneak the receiver behind you, and that's what happened. So he's apologized, like, hey, and it's, when you make a mistake, my mantra is this: admit it, learn from it, and try not to compete and try not to repeat it. Do those three things: admit the mistake, take accountability, learn from it, and move on. And I think that's, a sign of wisdom too, because if anyone comes in here, I've never made a mistake. It's always somebody else's fault. I don't think you would apply wisdom to that person. So lots of things there. So as we grow, it's I wish I had a whiteboard right here. It's one of those where I'd be putting intelligent application of knowledge, learning from our mistakes. What are some of the, we're going to see there's a lot of different definitions of wisdom. A few things right here that I found as I was researching this. Wisdom is demonstrated and not declared. Would you agree with that statement? It's demonstrated, not declared. Same thing. You got somebody that's saying, I'm wise, then you might want to be wary of those people. And again, so now let's start turning this now towards Christian wisdom, our walk. Wisdom from above, as we're going to see right here. And true wisdom shows up in everyday behavior. It's not in titles, not entitled, but T-I-T-L-E-S, titles, education, or opinions. True wisdom is the source of humility. True wisdom is the source of humility. Let's look at that statement right there. In general, are most people that we consider wise humble? So it is, so it kind of goes hand in hand right there. Humility and wisdom. Because we go back to intelligent application of knowledge, or learning from our mistakes. Able to do those two things, does that usually imply someone that is arrogant? Or is arrogance usually a characteristic of people that do that, learn from our mistakes? Usually not. Most times the arrogant person, when they make a mistake, what's the first thing they do? And they try to avoid accountability, don't they? And before you can learn from your mistake, first thing you got to do is be accountable for it. But anyway, we digress. All right, page 111 from our book right here. A few statements right here on wisdom. And again, I'm just going to kind of skip around right there on that page as it says, wisdom is, you had to have wisdom to be able to use that knowledge correctly. There's a good statement right there. On down right there, about the last paragraph, about the middle of the last paragraph, it says, knowledge enables us to take things apart, but wisdom enables us to put things together and relate God's truth to daily life. And it says, James was writing about, he was contrasting true wisdom and false wisdom, and we're going to see, and I got it right there in 3 different aspects, and we see that's what the little red headings are right there. But it kind of goes back to this, and it says, as far as being able to, knowledge enables us to take things apart, but wisdom enables to put things together. And it kind of gets back to, like for example, Frida accuses me of having some useless knowledge in my head sometimes with some trivia. I don't know, maybe I have a lot of knowledge, but if I can't apply it, then it's hard. And that's why I try to get, kids don't, in teaching, I give them a hard time understanding. Yeah, you can, I try to design my test to where they got to take what they learn. Now, I will put some general knowledge stuff on there where it's just they memorize the definition, but I want them to be able to have, I always tell them, test you, have a working definition of that. What does that mean? Be able to apply. If I give you a scenario, you can apply that definition and stuff. So I think we get our author right there in our text gives us a good example of that. We can take things, knowledge, we can gain knowledge, but if we can't apply it, is it truly wisdom? So that kind of gets us into right here where our Sunday school book says there are 3 different aspects that contrast true wisdom from above and false wisdom, and we're going to see that contrasting the origins. He has contrast and operations, which is like characteristics of them basically, and then contrast and outcome. So we want to look at those right here. And I'm going to start right here now into our text. Like I said, it's 13 through 18, but I'm going to start with verse 15 right here first. And we see that wisdom, let's see, make sure I'm on it right. Yeah. I'm just going to go ahead and read 13 through 18 right here. So, who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom. But if ye have bitter envy and strife in your hearts, glory not, and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish. I'll stop right there. So, verse 15. Talking about wisdom that descendeth not from above. Wisdom from not above. In other words, false wisdom, earthly wisdom. It is earthly, sensual, and devilish right there. So we want to kind of look at those things right there. Those are kind of characteristics there, or where false wisdom comes from. So if you look right there on the left-hand side right there, we see the origins of false wisdom. First of all, it is earthly. And it says, it's verse 15, this wisdom descendeth not from above. So if it doesn't come from God, it doesn't come from heaven, however we want to look at that, where does it come from? Earthly wisdom is what? Man-made. It's man-made, not from God. So right there, What's the red flag? If it's man-made, by definition, it's flawed, isn't it? Correct? So it's man-made, not from God, and then it is short-sighted, and it deals with the immediate or present. So it kind of deals with the now. It doesn't take the big picture into effect. You ever know folks, like I said, now kids are like that, man. They're worried about right there at that moment. They don't think about, they don't even think about the next period of 10 minutes from now. You know, like I said, I shouldn't bash kids. I joke around because I was the same way, because there's a lot of things now I look like, man, if I'd have planned better, I could have been a lot better off. I can still remember, it was summer after I graduated, and I hadn't applied for any scholarships or anything like that. And somehow it all worked out. I think somebody gave one up or something. I managed to get one, and thank the good Lord, because I don't know what I'd be doing now. But yeah, wasn't worried about it. I was just worried about that day. And that's what man-made. It's short-sighted, dealing with immediate present, and it has I call it a this life only view. And it leaves out God, and it's just confined to this world and not eternity. Again, we're looking now, remember, we're going to start looking at wisdom. We're talking about godly wisdom, true wisdom from above, what we're comparing this to. So that's earthly. So that's one of the things there, one of the origins of false wisdom. Another one, as it says, if it's man-made, obviously, if it's man-made, then another, it says right here in verse 15, it's sensual. So what does that mean? With that, already, the word we found here, natural, opposite of spiritual. And I'm going to kind of look at this, and this comes from a Greek word right here that is there's reference to it in a couple of things here. It's called psychikos, P-S-U-K-I-K-O-S. Like the Greek names there. It's a Greek word that means life or soul or natural. And basically, and in this term, it's a word that means opposite of spiritual. And we see it in 1 Corinthians 2, chapter 14. I'm going to read that to you right here. 1 Corinthians 2, chapter 14. Turn right to it. It's going to be a good day. But the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God. And that natural right there again, it's referring to being opposite of spiritual. And that's kind of what this is referencing right here. In Jude, verse 19 in Jude, if I can find it, it says, "These be they who separate themselves sensual, not having not the Spirit," right there. So it kind of that word right there, natural, means opposite of spiritual. So it deals with the next thing. It deals with self-gratification or desires of the flesh, and that's not without getting just talking about things there. We're not all the things that may come to mind with that. It could be fame, it could be money, it could be things like that. Just immediate self-gratification where, hey, I'm trying to move up in the world. It's passion-based, and it appeals to human desires rather than God. And if we turn page 114, no, we're not ready to go there yet, so that's on the next one. So that's the next origin right there. Earthly and sensual. And then finally, all those things lead to this, demonic. And that is, or devilish, as it says there in verse 15. So on page 114 right there, again, as it refers to, at the very top it says, "Wisdom that is from beneath is also devilish." Perhaps the best translation is demonic. And that's where I got that from. And kind of, as we get to it right here, it's the wisdom of Satan contradicts the wisdom of God. I think we all agree with that. And this type of wisdom will confound and confuse you. It will confound and confuse if you don't know the wisdom of God. So if you think about it, And I mentioned it last week when we were talking about the tongue. It's deceitful. So Satan, if we go back again, how did Satan deceive Eve? Obviously he did it with the tongue, but also he gave his wisdom on it. Hey, yeah, there's a reason. There's a reason he doesn't want you to eat from that. Yeah, so so we get that. So that's that demonic reasoning right there. It's deceitful. And as we said, usually it's unleashed with the tongue. And here's something right here we need to pay attention to. And this is again, it is usually often loud, assertive, and demanding of attention. Demonic wisdom right there. Sometimes I almost want to say, what's that? That's an oxymoron almost, isn't it? I would think. Demonic wisdom. But again, that is, it's a man. So obviously it's flawed, and we see that right there. So if we look right there, a lot of origins of false wisdom. A lot of things earthly, sensual, and demonic. But now let's go to verse 17a right there. And it says, in James 3 and 17a, it says, but the wisdom that is from above is first pure. I'm going to stop right there on 17a. So true wisdom from above, where's it from? From God in heaven. That's pretty short. That's pretty short and to the point right there. So if you'll notice right there, the origins of false wisdom, man-made, dealing with the flesh, demonic. True wisdom from above has one source, God. It's pure, and wisdom from above starts when you accept Jesus as Lord and Savior. So it starts there. You got to know it. And that's how that begins to grow right there. So those are the origins between false wisdom and true wisdom. So now, the next section in our book, it refers to contrast and operations. In other words, what are characteristics? Again, would be another thing right here. So let's look on the false wisdom side of it, and we see four things listed right there. We got envy, strife, boasting, and deceit. So let's take a look at 14a right there. Or just verse 14, because this is where all these come from. But if ye have bitter envying and strife in your hearts, glory not and lie not against the truth. So, not just envy. What does it say right there? Bitter envy. Bitter jealousy. So, that is in the heart. And what that is just referring to you're jealous of the competition and you deal with them ruthlessly. So, those type of people are those that, I will step over and step on whoever I got to get to my goals. Does not matter. Get out of my way. Just a few words right here on page 115 on envy. It says the word carries the meaning of selfish ambition and zeal. James 3:1, where James warned them not to be ambitious for spiritual offices. Remember, we started the chapter like that. And it says, it is easy to go on an eagle. This is the next paragraph, second paragraph under envy. It's easy to go on an eagle trip under the guise of spiritual zeal. The Pharisees used their religious activities to promote the praise of men. We ought to be zealous in the things of the Lord, but we must be sure that our motives are right. The wisdom of this world exalts man and robs God of glory. And that's a key thing right there. Yeah, we need to approach it with zeal. But remember, at the end of the day, whose got to be glorified? Man or God? God. That's the key right there. And we need to remember that. So next thing, as we continue on, the next thing we have there is strife. And if you'll turn the page there, if you're following along in your book, it just kind of, I like what it says. When I hear strife, it's funny how sometimes when the word gets translated from the Greek, sometimes it's kind of totally different from what I think. Strife. This word means party spirit. It was used by the Greeks to describe a politician out canvassing for votes. So how would you describe that? Strife, based on what the book says. It says the Greeks used that word, and the word that translates from a politician canvassing for votes.
I guess I thought strife meant something different.
Yeah, I did too. I always thought strife would be, hey,
Causing-
causing a ruckus, causing strife. But in this case, self-glory. Almost, when a politician is out canvassing for votes, what's he saying? Look at me, vote for me.
They put down his opponent.
Yeah. Or look at me, or look how bad he is, or she is, or they are. Or anything like that. Now let's apply that more here to again, a false wisdom, like I said, and you see a lot of churches get in trouble with that, because now it goes back, I said, all the glory should go to who? It should go to God. Then you get, look at me, look at what I did, stuff like that. And at the end of the day, that's not what it's about. It's a passion to advance our own self-interest at any cost. So, we can see a lot of that right there. Next, we go boasting. So right underneath there on page 116, we'll continue. And it's kind of if we look, it's kind of a natural progression right here. Pride loves to boast, and nothing is prouder than the wisdom of men. There is a way to report blessings so God gets the glory, but there is also an approach that gives men praise. It's tragic to see mutual admiration societies among God's people. And it kind of gets into, if you look at it right there, in 2 Corinthians 10, Paul was forced to boast about his ministry, but he was careful to give God the glory. I think Paul's a great example right there on how to do that. It says, when God's wisdom's at work, there's a sense of humility and submission, and you want God to get all the glory. You have no desire to compare yourself with any other Christian because you see only Christ. And that's the thing, because when we may compare ourselves to each other, but how do we stand up when we start comparing ourselves to Christ? We fall, but it's not even, we don't even deserve to be in the conversation. So boasting, you're proud of his wisdom. If you notice, I have wisdom there in quotation marks, that has brought success. He denies truth and is arrogant about it. And then finally, deceit. If we can move on down right there, at the very last line of page 116, it says, and boasting usually involves lies. A man's life is not read in his press releases. It is read by the Lord in his heart. So lies from boasting, that's what deceit. So really, as we start looking at that, each one of those right there kind of build on each other. Envy, the jealousy leads to strife or boasting about yourself, or basically promoting yourself, boasting about yourself, and usually that leads to having to lies. So now let's compare that to the other side. Whereas now the origins of false wisdom came from many, we can see that the characteristics, if you look at the characteristics or operations of true wisdom, meekness, purity, peace, gentleness, compliance, mercy, what do you think of right there? Well, before I go on to that, let's go back to the question I have down there in the little gray box, or blue, whatever color it is. Again, men, we're colorblind. We just have the basic. We only know the primary colors in black and white, just because we know what color the officials wear on what sport. Anyway, our goals and self-ambition bad. So what this is saying right here? Self-glory. Is it okay for us to have, like if I want to have a professional goal? Is it okay for me to have that?
It's important.
It is. It's okay to have goals, but what is it? What's the key? And again, we're just talking in general right now as people. Now we'll apply it to the church, and it applies to the church. If I move up by, by those things, like I said, it's okay to have, like my goal was to be a head coach or whatever, but if I'm working for the current head coach and I start kind of talking about him behind his back, start going to administration and stuff, am I approaching that in a correct way? No. Goals and self-ambition are not bad. It's just making sure that we don't do it at all costs, or we don't do it at the harm of other people. That makes sense, I think. So now let's look at true wisdom from above. Again, what time is just getting away from me. We got meekness. I like here on page 117, the word from meekness right here is a Greek word that was used for a horse that had been broken so that its power was under control. That was the Greek word that meekness was came from, or was used right here. And underneath I have not weakness, power under control, and does not assert selfishly. That's what meekness is. It's just power under control. It seeks the glory of God. Meekness is the correct use of power. And as Nathan says, wisdom is the correct use of knowledge. So that's kind of a good way to look at meekness, right? Meekness is the correct use of power. And a lot of times it gets associated with weakness. And that, and again, that kind of, if we look at verse 13 is where that comes from. It says, "Who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out of a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom." So verse 13 kind of tells you right there. He asks, the people he's writing to, "Hey, who among you is wise?" Well, he needs to show it with meekness and wisdom. Now that gets us down now to verse 17, and we kind of get some of the remainder here of properties of wisdom. If we look right there, "But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy, good fruits, without partiality, and without hypocrisy." When you read that verse, what comes to mind right there? What other, as you were reading this, where does this sound familiar from other parts of the Bible we read?
Fruit of the Spirit.
Fruit of the Spirit. Wisdom, it sounds like wisdom is just right there hand in hand with fruits of the Spirit. So we see that right there. So purity. If we I'm getting my speed this up to get this wrapped up because there's some good stuff, especially in the conclusion. It's the foremost characteristic of wisdom from above. Starts with purity, and it's mentioned first. There's a reason to mention first in the other qualities. And basically, what purity is means it's just free of the defilements mentioned in verses 14 through 16. Or the faults, you could say, defilements, faults, however you want to put it, right there mentioned in verses 14 through 16. Again, we'll go through these next few here, right here. We got peace is next. Peace based on holiness, not compromise. And that's important. You can't compromise the purity of the church, and it does not create conflict from jealousy, etc. The big thing right there is those first two. There's one thing about keeping the peace, but if there's something getting introduced into the church that's not biblical, then that's not what it's saying. I'm just going to say, I don't want to cause any problems. Nothing. That's what they mean right there with holiness, peace based on holiness and not compromise. Gentleness. Page 118 right there, it kind of gets into it. It says it carries the meaning of moderation without compromise. It's very similar to peace. You carry the moderation without compromise, gentleness without weakness. The gentle person does not deliberately cause fights, but neither does he compromise the truth in order to keep the peace. So those two kind of go hand in hand right there. We got compliance next. It says the compliant person is willing to hear all sides of a question, but he does not compromise his own convictions. He can disagree without being disagreeable. He is swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, as James said there. So, in compliance, the wise person, as one writer said, is open to reason, is teachable, open to being taught the Word of God and the wisdom of God, and a wise person knows when he's hearing truth. Again, that comes, it said, studying God's Word, things of that nature. Next, we got mercy. Understanding that God in His mercy reached out to them when they were helpless and hopeless, and they attempt to minister that way for God. That flips it over right here. We're still in operations right there. It just shows you right there how the characteristics of true wisdom from above. A lot more of those than there are than for the false wisdom. Good fruit. That's another thing. Good that really benefits others and is what is best for them. Radiated from the inside and is involved in doing all kinds of good for people. And again, that's another thing we're going to see from wisdom. Good fruit's going to be a natural result of that. Decisiveness. You're not double-minded. You're unwavering on God's principle. And then finally, sincerity. And that means not hypocritical. And there's a genuineness and certainty. So all those are operations or characteristics of true wisdom from above. So finally, with that, now I think we'll be able to wrap it up right here. What are the outcomes of false wisdom and true wisdom? And then over here on outcomes, verse 16, let's take a look. For where envy and strife is, there is what? Confusion and every evil work. So strife, confusion, every evil work. And then page 120, it kind of towards the bottom, second to last paragraph right there. Basically, evil here says confusion sets the stage for every evil work. Evil here means worthless, of no account. So it leads to division and spiritual damage. And let's look at the outcomes of true wisdom from above. The grace, wise believer will produce fruit. Wise people are always interested in bearing fruit for God. Righteous fruit is always produced through those who have the true wisdom of God. The other thing is, so we get fruit being produced for God. A wise person is a peace promoter, and he associates with those of like mind. Peacemakers produce a righteous atmosphere. And again, as we said, that's not compromise. That's just being able, being mature to handle things without jealousy, etc. So, and again, we can see under the false wisdom, we can see these outcomes today in churches, in our workplace. Anytime you see those things like envy, strife, boasting, deceit, starting to anytime those start to appear into an organization, you get the strife, you get confusion. And you basically, it's like every evil worker basically works of no account right there. So let's look at the conclusion. And the word wisdom right there, there's a Hebrew word that means wisdom. It's called hakma, and it says here, it's not what we would think wisdom would be. And this word in hakma, this word hakma in the Hebrew language didn't mean head knowledge or even heart knowledge, as we would describe wisdom. It's referred to the idea of skill. The word would be used when someone would show prowess in what they were doing. And it talks about a talented musician or craftsman or student was doing excellently well. It was someone that was wise or skilled in this area of work. Hakma would be the word that was used. So if we move back right here, this wisdom or hakma, far as a spiritual life, that's the skill we should use to live our life, to show the world our faith and to live our life according to God's will. In other words, wisdom is a skill. It's a skill, and we should show that. And if it's a skill, what's the thing about skills? When if y'all start shooting a basketball, people probably, how do you improve your skill at shooting a basketball? You gotta go out and practice. Or working with, for me, My skill at fixing lawnmowers has increased. Why? Because I've worked on it. I've learned it. You know, I've learned from mistakes. So that's what wisdom is. It's a skill that we need to work on. And it's just like, and you know, we said earlier, faith and works are intermingled with one another. You know, can't have, you know, one's going to prove, you know, we're going to see one from the other right there. And wisdom is the same way. And wisdom from above is another entity that reveals our faith, and it too is intermingled with it. So if, you know, like I said, if we're doing the things we should be doing for God and showing that wisdom from above, that's just a natural byproduct of our faith. And it shows right there. So, all right, got it down 4 minutes to spare. So anyway, like I said, I think there's a lot of good stuff right there on that one. So we're seeing here as I close it out with James, we can see that we're starting to see where it's not this proves this. It's just if you've got this, then this is going to show up. It's just natural things that are going to show in a mature Christian walk right there. So, all right, next week we get to chapter 4, and with that, we'll close with a word of prayer. Lord, again, we're thankful for this day. Thankful for all your many blessings, Lord. Thankful for this time to study your word. Lord, we ask you to be with each and every person here. Be with their families. Lord, be with those who may not be able to be here. You know the reason, Lord. Let them feel the comfort of your presence, Lord, that you're in charge of all conditions, Lord, here. And Lord, as we go through our worship service, let it be pleasing to you. Lord, just lead, guide, and direct us that we will grow in our walk with you when we leave here, and that we can apply it and show that wisdom from above, Lord, that we just studied about.